up there. Yeah. So Barbara Donata's essay in Power of the Pen about paragraphs and
Margins. Margins.
margin. I'm sorry.
Okay, it's the heat,
Margin.
Victor. Don't worry.
Yes, I'm very hot here. In fact, I I've got all of my fans on and doors open and windows open.
Oh,
Yes. So, um, Barbara, I wanted to give you a little background on you. I understand that you've got background in the counseling field or in the mental health. I was thinking, no?
no, I don't. No, it's interesting. And first of all, I
Yeah,
just
tell
want to
me a
say,
little bit about that. I was,
okay. All right. Well, Victor, first I want to thank you for putting together this book club. And I love
yeah,
that you first started it. You said you had bought the book and you hadn't read it thoroughly. And I did the same thing. You know, of course I
yes.
read my chapter, right? And then
Yeah.
I picked a couple others and I put it down like I do sadly with a lot of books. And then I picked it up, put it down. So anyway, it's perfect that you did this. And
Yeah.
I really appreciate, you know, all the enthusiasm you put into this book club. And I wanted to thank Judy too for
Yes.
all of the amazing publicity you do for everything for AHAF. So I just want to kind of thank you both for that, for all your work. And so my background, Victor. So I actually have a bachelor's degree in sociology and intended to get my master's of social work. That was my goal, you know, 50 years ago. And I was living in the Boston area and got a job at Boston University and said, great, I can get my MSW at night and, you know, get half tuition as an employee. Well, they didn't have an evening program at the time. This was back in the 70s. So I
Yeah.
said, well, what else can I do? And I was always a decent writer. And I said, well, how about public relations? I knew nothing about public relations at all. So I ended up getting a master's degree in that from Boston University. And so I spent actually about 20, 25 plus years in the field of public relations in various types of organizations. I worked for corporations. I worked for a large manufacturing company to start out with in central Massachusetts. Then I worked for the Worcester Art Museum. Then I worked for Tufts University's School of Veterinary Medicine. And by that time, I'd been in the field for many, many years. The field was changing. Um, pardon me? Oh, yeah. Anyway, the field was changing. And so at one point in my early 50s, I thought, you know, I'm kind of tired of being a mouthpiece. You know, I had this small writing and, you know, you expect someone in PR or other marketing functions to want to be out there. And I was a good behind the scenes person. I really didn't have a desire to be out there. And along the way in 1988, I attended an adult education program
Mhm.
in Worcester, Massachusetts on handwriting analysis. And I was hooked. I was so excited about it. So I asked the instructor how she learned about this, and she studied at IGAS. So I, you know, this was before the internet, of course, you know, the home studies. Has
Right.
anybody here done that too? Remember they would,
Yes, I did it.
yes,
The
yes. So you
LGAS
remember.
home study. Yeah, I remember.
Bill Harms had done.
Yes.
So I did that course. And of course, you're
Hmm.
supposed to finish in about 18 months. And it took me 9 years because I was working and married and, you know, had
Right.
a family and things like that. So long story short, I eventually did become certified and I joined the Massachusetts chapter of IJS and I
Oh,
made lifelong friends. I, you
yeah.
know, certainly met Ruth there and Ruth's
Mhm.
daughter and many other friends. And I mean, such a joy in my life. And then eventually I decided because of my small handwriting, and I'm not shy, but I'm, you know, I'm better behind the scenes. And I got a job at the University of Massachusetts Medical School in human subjects research. So I did that for the last 12 years of my
Um,
career, working career. And I I was able to use my sociology and PR training. I recruited people into various types of research studies.
mhm.
And so I started out as a research coordinator, et cetera, et cetera. and worked my way up into a program director. And again, that small writing, research was a good field for me.
Yes.
And along the way, I also took the test through AHAF. I became,
Mhm.
because I knew early on traits, I was very good at trait stroke, that concept, again, because I could take things apart and identify them singly, but to put them together, to have the more Gestalt approach, I had to really work hard at that. And I
Yes.
eventually did by going to lots of meetings in the Massachusetts area. And, so that's how I got involved with AHAF. So I'm
Yeah.
not a counselor. I
You're,
wanted to be early on,
yeah.
but I'm not. So
Well, you um you should connect with Jane um with the
Yank.
research chair. Yeah, Jane Yank and help
I
us with gathering
well, I
participants
was
in research. That's a very difficult thing to do. That's amazing you had the two. It's difficult to get subjects, human
It
subjects.
is. It
It
is.
is.
And I was hired initially. I was hired. I was working at Tufts University at their
Uh-huh.
veterinary school in Massachusetts as their PR director. And I took this job at UMass Medical School as a part-time just to see if I was any good at it. And the study I was initially hired for, you may have heard of the Women's Health Initiative, which was a nationwide study started many, many years ago to really see the aging effects of women,
Uh-huh.
menopause, postmenopause,
Yeah.
premenopause, hormone replacement therapy, et cetera, et cetera. So I was hired to recruit women into that study. And at the time, I was having hot flashes. So it
Yeah.
was easy. It was not hard. Hope
Right.
I'm not offending anybody here, but it was I believed in the study so much. I mean, that's kind
Yeah.
of key for me. In whatever I do, I have to really believe in it in order to,
Yeah.
present it to other people and see if it might be a good fit for them. Sometimes it is and
Yeah.
sometimes it's not, but
Yeah.
anyway.
Thank you. That's
Welcome.
um I don't want to forget at the end, help me Judy remember to talk about the one next month, okay? Because I get all excited into what we're talking about.
Okay.
Okay.
So for margins, you want me to just kind of start it out?
Yeah.
Yeah, great.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I'll turn it over to you. You're doing good.
Well,
This
thank you.
this is
Well, I really,
it's fascinating actually the how each of us come to handwriting analysis and our stories. And in fact, see it because it's so unique. Each
right,
person's how we end up here is
right. It
very
is.
unique, and it's fascinating to hear these kind of life stories and how the handwriting analysis has affected us.
It really is. And
Yeah.
and as I said, I've met so many wonderful people. I mean, I've
Mhm.
certainly learned about myself, but learned about other people, friends, neighbors, strangers, employers, my daughter's teachers,
Yes.
so much fun. But I have always, for me, handwriting analysis and graphology has always been an avocation. At one point, I thought perhaps I could go into forensic document examination, and I signed up for a course, and I got it was in correspondence course, and I pursued it for maybe about a year, but I thought, I'm having too much fun using handwriting analysis the way I am, which was presenting to, say, civic groups, teaching adult education
Hmm.
classes, doing home parties and things like that, working in
Yeah.
conventions, that I didn't have the confidence that I could actually, be in a courtroom and have opposing attorney discredit me for, oh, is it true that you're Madam Ruby? And not that I would
Yes.
ever present myself that way. So I said, yeah, this probably isn't for me.
Yeah.
Um, and I know Ruth does a great job with it, as does her daughter, and I have other friends up here who do that too. And but I just thought, it's probably not for me.
Hmm.
So when Sheila asked me to participate in this in the anthology, The Power of the Pen, I immediately went to, well, I'm not good enough to, submit a chapter. what do I know? I mean, I've been studying this since 1988 and, certainly had been paid to perform analyses and et cetera, but I didn't think I had much to contribute. So I said, well, let me think about it. So I went to bed that night and I said a prayer. I said, God, if this is something you want me to do, just give me a little, a little sign. So I woke up the next morning and the first word on my mind were margins. I said, margins, that's it. I'll write about margins because margins are, I mean, they really represent boundaries for us, where we start, where we end, how much space we give ourselves, how much space we give to other people. And I thought, well, I can probably do that. So I just set about looking at samples. And then I'm like most of us, I'm sure, have an awful lot of books, graphology books, and wanted to see what the experts said about it. So that's how I basically wrote my chapter. So I don't claim to be the ultimate expert on margins, but I thought I'd put together something that was reasonable that people could refer to as a reference if they needed it. So, um, I did learn some interesting things that Nadia Olyanova, if I'm pronouncing her name correctly, in her book, The Psychology of Handwriting, she stated that margins were believed to have started by the monks because they would hold the paper with their left thumb while they wrote and they illustrated their manuscripts with their right hand. So that was kind of cool. So I thought this would be more of a discussion to hear what other people do with margins. I mean, I look at them, it's kind of the first thing I look at when I'm looking at a piece of handwriting. And I get the piece of paper or envelope or whatever it is, and I hold it far away from me and I look at it and I get it kind of like a quick kind of a gut feeling before I do any measurements or, in-depth analysis. So margins, that would be included in the space. We look at space, form, and movement, and margins would be part of the space category, along with words and letters and lines. So do other people do that too? Hello? Yeah.
The initial,
You know, just to
impression.
let people know, I muted everybody, but feel free to unmute
Oh,
yourself.
yeah, please
Yeah.
do, because I really didn't intend this to be just a presentation, more of a discussion.
Mhm.
So I
Yeah.
I
wondered if,
like that.
Yeah.
yeah, more fun, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah,
So,
I do the same thing when I get a sample. I like to look at it from far away and kind of just see how it's all set up.
yes, yeah, because you can tell so much, just off the
Right.
bat. How about other people?
yeah, it fits into the whole, margins, you don't realize you're looking at margins, but it frames the picture,
It
so,
It does. I mean, if
yeah.
we look at, the envelope or the piece of paper is our environment, and the writing is how we could potentially behave in that environment. The margins is kind of like that first, step on the floor, Are
Yeah.
you gonna jump in? Are you gonna be, tiptoe in and maybe go slightly in? So I think margins are kind of a cool
Yeah.
thing. Yeah,
Barbara,
yeah.
I
I
just,
first learned the stroke by stroke method of the graphoanalysis. So
Yeah,
I similar, I started looking at the more Gestalt methods going on.
yeah,
And so I sometimes if I'm like stuck on those stroke by stroke things,
yeah.
I turn the page upside down.
Yes, I have done that too.
I turn the
I,
page upside down to kind of like shake up, you know, my staring at the details and
yeah, well,
trying to look
yes,
at the
I
whole thing. Yeah.
totally agree with you, Victor. And I turn it upside down too, because sometimes that gives me a clearer view of the baseline, of the space
Hmm.
in the lines. Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
it's a good thing to do. Yeah.
I just want to say, Barbara, I just read your article, and I've read a lot of people's articles on margins, and they're all a little different. And I really enjoyed your take because you said things like, rigid margins, like if it's exact, if the right margin is exact. And I would think to myself, oh, I would cringe. But the way you wrote it, you said you know this person enjoys sticking exactly to the rules and is very good at organization, and you gave all the positives, which was fantastic. And I really appreciated your viewpoint as opposed to others that I've read.
Yeah.
So you had a lot to contribute.
Thank you, Judy. Thank you for saying that. You know, I've worked very, very hard over the years to really be aware of what I'm saying to other people and what I'm writing. You know, like many possible students, when I first started studying this, I'd look at a piece of handwriting and I'd look and I'd go, oh, and people would say, what is it? And of course, I didn't know much at all at the time. And so thank you, Judy. I work hard at it always, you know, being truthful, but doing no harm, you know. I'm in no position to do anyone harm. So yeah, thank you.
Something that's helped me with when it comes to a handwriting sample that I come across that's got all the, you know, that is enough to drop your jaw a little bit. I deal with I mean, with us, I mean, if we take in, we look at lots of handwriting samples all the time. So when we come across some of these handwriting samples, I mean, for myself, in my case, what I end up doing is I say, okay, you know, how many times do I actually come across a handwriting sample that looks normal versus kind of crazy and out there? And so by doing that, I don't necessarily claim to myself that this person that I'm looking at is normal, you know,
Right.
but by a simple range of percentages, okay, this percentage, X percentage are going to look like this, X percentage look like that. You know, by thinking in that perspective, it's been able, I mean, it's affected my the way that I come across, I think in a positive way, because I'm less likely to have the, oh my goodness, you know, kind of expression. So
Right.
that's just something I've used. I mean, just range of percentages.
Good, good. So Charles, you use your handwriting a lot in your business. Are you a therapist or are you nope. Okay.
I'm actually not in business. I need to get there. But I mean, I look at everybody's samples right now. I mean, here in Mexico, even, I mean, I'm dealing with I'll go with these groups over here and I'll meet up and then, you know, they'll show me whatever sample they've got in Spanish or something like that. And I'll, you know, compare notes and whatever. But yeah, I need to get into business.
Well, you
So
will. Persistence, you know. Find your market. There's a lot of people here who do this for a living, and Ruth being certainly one in particular. And who else here on the call does this for business? Well, don't give up,
I
Charles.
don't anymore, but I did do it for 10 years from 89 to 99.
You did, Kathleen. Wow,
Yeah.
wow. And did you have a particular client base you were looking at, or
I combined it with my hypnotherapy practice. And so basically it was personality and helping them in their relationships.
wow. So I thought margins is kind of a cool thing when you're looking at relationships. Charles said earlier, I don't know if you heard him, but he's writing a book about kind of toxic men and how women can avoid that. If I heard you correctly, Charles, and I immediately thought, boy, margins would be a cool tool for
yeah,
people to use. I mean, if we look at somebody who has no margins whatsoever, in addition to other, you know, graphic indicators, that could be a way.
right. Margins are one of the actual exact things that I do use. That left margin is extremely important because this character that I describe in the book, I mean, their left margin will go everywhere. That thing, you know, they don't toe the line of society at all. And so it's just one of the tactics. I mean, another big one is jealousy that I'll find. I mean, if I find jealousy in a handwriting sample, it's like bingo. I mean, I go start straight stacking at that point. I'm like, okay, what else we got here? You know, but yeah, that left margin is very important.
It is important. And of course, we know, I mean, most handwriting analysts will agree that the left represents the past, the right represents the future, and the middle represents yourself, the present right now. So I
Hey,
have
have
not,
you
go ahead.
have you examined like the Jewish nation? They do they write from, or the Japanese from right to left?
No, I have not, Jane, and I was just gonna say, I really don't have any experience with cultures where people are taught to write from the right to the left.
I
So
haven't
what do
either.
people think about that? From a margin perspective, would you agree, is it reversed? So for example, in those cultures, does the left represent the future and the right represent the past? I don't,
You know what? I don't know the answer to
I,
that. Does
yeah.
anyone here?
I I was
I've
thinking it.
asked that question to many people and I've
Uh-huh.
gotten, both answers.
Yeah.
So really nobody knows. So that's
So
what
Yeah.
I think.
I was thinking
You know
about this
what I
question.
think is if you go by where you start is,
Yeah.
you know, is the, the beginning of the past,
Hmm.
Right.
and the direction you're going is the future. I would think that a person that wrote from right to left would have it opposite
I would
of
too.
our culture, but I don't know.
Right.
Yeah,
Right.
I think Rachel, you have experience with that.
Right. So yesterday I
Yeah.
looked at two opposite handwriting. So one was Leonard Cohen, and of course he's in the poetry. So all his margins are, he's starting from the left and very close to the left, but the right is halfway page. So he's really not reaching, he's writing. So it has a bit of a poetic kind of a feel because it's mostly poetry, but it wasn't something unusual. So I looked at several samples. That's how he writes. So the future for him was very much unknown, totally unknown. And it's an extreme wide margin, right margin. It's not
Yeah.
only like a little bit or medium, it's an extreme wide margin. And then I looked at Marc Chagall. So he wrote in, it's kind of Hebrew, but Yiddish, also starting from right to left, but the margins were decent. So I was looking at them and I said, is he aware? Not, but he was a very balanced individual. Even we can see in his painting, everything is like very pastoral and it's very balanced. So the writing, and the reason why I did it, because I'm a visual artist and I'm interested in seeing how the artist, his handwriting or her handwriting corresponds to the painting style.
Yeah.
And that's very interesting to me. So that's why I was looking for. And by the way, Leonard Cohen, he did a lot of drawings and paintings. And actually in Canada, in Toronto, at the University of Toronto, they have a lot of his visual art works.
So
So
let me ask. So if I'm understanding right, if they're writing from the right side to the left,
Yes.
right, then the future is on the left side. Is that
Right.
the
yes.
left boundary? That's
Yeah.
how.
Yes.
Yeah.
So I
Seems
wonder, Rachel.
reasonable.
Yeah, it does. Yeah. So I wonder, Rachel, for the poet, were those kind of like stanzas? Did they end in the middle of the page because his line of poetry ended? Or no, it was a
No. So
longer-
Leonard Cohen, he wrote in English and French because he lived in Quebec for a
Uh-huh.
long time. So his two primary languages were English and French. So
Okay.
it wasn't like some, although he comes from a Jewish background, no, he wrote mostly in English and
In the
French.
Latin.
Yes.
Yeah,
So
and the Latins. Mhm.
in Latin, so he would start then on the right and he would only go, say, halfway across the page.
Yeah.
So then if we use the same theory that, of course, French write from left to right, correct?
No, French the same way as English.
As
Yes,
we.
so this,
C'est la même chose, like the French say, it's the same thing.
yeah,
Because
yeah,
I speak, read, and write French too. So, and Latin, Italian. So Italian, all the Latin languages are like the English language.
Mm.
So
okay.
Left to
So
right.
they go left to right. So
Right, and
Okay.
Cyrillic Russian the same way. We write from left to right,
okay,
Cyrillic. So all the Bulgarian, Russian, Yugoslavian, all those go the same way as we do in English.
okay, good. Thank you. Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
But I'm curious, Rachel, with the since you compared Marc Chagall, his handwriting and his artwork. So if his handwriting goes right to left,
Mhm.
is that how you would interpret his artwork also?
So no, he had a very mellow style, totally devoid of any impulsion or aggression. It was very mellow. He was very much in love. He had a beautiful wife. He was very content in his personal life. So you can see in the art and in the handwriting, it's very mellow. By the way, why can't we look at the handwriting? I mean, I don't have a copy. I just out of curiosity, I was looking at it because it was part of my curiosity research. But I'll be happy to make a screenshot, a photocopy, and send it.
This,
Mhm.
I was thinking this morning, I was thinking about these questions about different style, the different directions of writing and how that might show up in the margins and stuff. And I realized that there are several people. There's in the British Institute, the research director is um type she knows Chinese. Okay, now she was doing a lecture and she focuses on the English Latin forms, with the European graphology, but she's familiar with the Chinese and was discussing how that might show up. And I was thinking, we could have like get several people together that are familiar with these languages and these writing styles and have this conversation.
Right,
That
right.
would be good.
It
Yeah.
would be good. And of course, what we're also thinking about the cultural aspects, not just how people were taught to write, but how they're taught in their culture to interact. I mean, some cultures tend to have a reputation of being more emotionally expressive and demonstrative, and others have a reputation of being a little more reserved and back.
Yes.
So you wonder if that, is true. And do we see that? You would think we'd see that in their handwriting if it's true. I don't know. I have not really done much.
Definitely.
Yeah.
Definitely. If you take the northern countries, say Estonia, Latvia, Denmark, Sweden, these are northern countries. So, and the climate is very cold there. So you could see it's the person's temperament is much cooler. But once you go to the Mediterranean, everybody's talking with the hands and, we explain a lot and everything else. And yeah,
It's true.
definitely.
Yeah, it's true because my background is, I call myself an ish, English, Irish, Swedish, well, those northern countries. My husband is Italian, and he always said I was a social climber for marrying him. But I hear what you're saying. That's interesting. And
Yes, definitely. Yeah.
I would like to pose a question about the bottom margin.
yes,
Because that's my hardest margin to assess. And when I look at it, I'm not sure if down is the future, or I think Barbara in her article expressed that it was going into the larger society.
yes. I mean, at
Is
least that's on the books that I read, Judy. That's a great question. My basically it shows the bottom margin, shows us how we plan and how we interact with other people. And they said a large lower margin. So we're leaving a lot of white space at the bottom of the page. Even if we still have a lot more to write on that page, that would indicate people who kind of avoid contact. They want to keep some, it's that interaction again with other people. So you're interacting with the recipient of your letter or your communication, and you're not going So it's not really a forward movement like the right margin would be. It's more personal on that interaction level. And you're not interested in society at large, according to the books that I read and that I cited in my bibliography. But the narrow margin, really skinny at the bottom, that would mean that you stretch your social boundaries. You want to be surrounded by lots and lots of people. And you would expect, if you have a narrow margin at the bottom, your other margins may also be narrow. Not always the truth, not always the case, but that wouldn't be that unreasonable. So I haven't done the research, but it would be kind of interesting to see. That would be a good mini study,
Yeah.
how alike are margins? If they're 1 inch approximately right and left, what are the top and bottoms? I mean, most of the books that I read said that the top and bottom are less significant than the left and right. The top margin, of course, being how much respect you're giving to the recipient of your letter. But the lower margin, how much you want to interact with people at large. So,
See,
and
that makes sense to me also. But sometimes I've read that, just like going to the right margin, you get excited and go all the way to the edge before you want to start, that can also be indicated by going to the bottom of the lower margin.
yeah, well, and that makes sense. So if they maybe went just a little bit farther on the right, maybe not to the edge, but they went right to the bottom on the bottom. Yeah, I think so. I think that, with these rules for margins, we have to use our common sense. We have to see, this is what it means theoretically, but what are the other traits? What are the other things that we see in the handwriting sample, and how do they support or detract from the margins, and how do the margins support or detract from them? I mean, what do you guys think?
Yeah, I think that that's what I love about this discipline is it is about common sense. I mean, when you make a statement, you can see why you made that statement by looking at that handwriting.
Right, right.
It makes sense.
It does.
I think that's why we love this discipline.
I agree. And when I'm working at, say, a conference or at a home party or something like that, and those are more quickies, of course, they're not in-depth analyses. And I'll say boom, 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 boom. And the person oftentimes will say, well, are you psychic? I said, well, no, I'm not. But this is where I can see that. So I try to explain that to the person. Because and once I explain it, they're like, oh yeah, that makes a lot of sense. So thanks, Jane. Yeah, that is true. I thought the top and bottom margins were kind of very interesting. There was a technique I learned many, many years ago, and I did not include it in my chapter because I thought, well, I don't know how many people use it, but I do use it. And that is, if you're looking at it, say, a piece of paper, I talk with my hands a lot. So if you look at a piece of paper and you're looking at the writing, and if we agree that, say, the average left-hand margin should be about 1 inch. If the writing starts before that 1 inch, so it's a narrow margin on the left, I learned that if you know the person's age, say the person is age 70 as an example, and you're looking at the writing today at the time of the writing, and say they started at the half-inch mark as opposed to the 1 inch mark, then that would indicate that something significant occurred in that person's life at age 35. So it would be if they started at the half-inch mark as opposed to the 100%, would be 50%. And I have actually validated that in a few cases with people. And I didn't write about it again because I haven't read about it in other books. I can't even remember who taught me that. But have you ever heard of that or used that?
I have not heard of that, but I'd love to hear more about it.
Well, it's just it's a very interesting technique. And I've used it and it's been validated. People would say, oh yes, such and such, my grandfather died when I was that age, or something like that.
So are you talking about the very first word, where they place that first word
Yes.
on the margin?
Yes. Yeah. I mean, and that's assuming that the margin is the left-hand margin is relatively even, not necessarily rigid, but relatively even. So
Right.
go ahead. Yeah.
That's interesting. I didn't hear that. I haven't heard that.
Well, that's why I didn't put it in the chapter.
You know, Barbara, I've been thinking about how the writing page is like it comes out of the ideas of narrative psychology, basically, that you have a story going on in your life. And so this is showing that the writing is giving you a time frame. See, so it's symbolic. It's like this expression about the passage of time,
Yes, it is.
which would fit with that idea that you're saying about kind of like finding where there was significant event in the person's life or something happened where there's a distortion or something.
Exactly,
Yeah.
exactly right. So if we look at that first word, that first letter, and that first word generally sets the tone for the rest of the paragraph. Will it be relatively straight? Will it be widening? Will it be decreasing? Will it be really irregular? So in a sample that's not let's say relatively straight, that's when I would use that. If it was say decreasing or widening, I might not use that. Because I think, if we look at a margin that say starts at the 1-inch point on the left-hand side, and then you go down an inch or two, and it's going toward the right, and it continues to go toward the right, I would say that person might be feeling impulsive. They really want to achieve their goal. They want to move forward. They want to get away from the past. I mean, those are some possibilities depending on other things in the writing. So,
Okay, so I have a margin question. I saw someone's handwriting and I had never seen this before. They have, very lovely handwriting, and the left margin goes consistently in,
or the
just
right.
perfectly. It's like makes a line,
Okay.
so it's going consistently more to the right.
Right.
But then the next paragraph started all the way on the left and did the same thing. And there were 4 paragraphs and they all did the exact same movement.
Right.
So how do you, so when I see that movement, I feel the person is just very excited about the future, but also wanting to more and more distance from the past.
Yeah.
But they're very excited to leave the past and just move forward. But to see it over and over surprised me. But is that typical? I mean,
No.
has anyone else seen that?
No, but it sounds like a person that can get caught up in something, then realize and go back, go back and
Yes.
start over again. But
Mhm.
get excited. She gets excited about what she's doing, and then think, oh, I better get back and calm down and get started again.
That's
Yeah,
true.
that's a
That's true.
good
It does.
interpret.
It's true. It sounds like she might have, if it's a she might have some discipline, wants to start back and wants to like go back to where she's quote unquote supposed to start, but then gets
Mhm.
caught up and gets enthusiastic about it.
Yeah.
You might be a
Unless,
very enthusiastic person.
yes, yeah, and eager to move forward. I mean, the other possibility is the person kind of fancy herself as an artist? Does she like the way it looks? There's always that.
Mhm.
Which would be maybe more of a persona, I guess, technique. What do you think about that? I don't know. I haven't seen it, Judy, but it sounds what
Yeah.
are the things in the
I'll
writing?
have to ask. She's not a persona type person.
Okay, yeah. So maybe is she enthusiastic? Is she a
Yes.
goal? Yeah, so that
Yeah.
would be it then.
Mhm.
And that's I guess where I'd look to other things in her handwriting to see if they support that.
Mhm.
Does she have long, lower zone? Is she determined? Does she have persistence? Does she have, goal? I'd look at other things like that and other
Yes.
spacing matters. Yeah,
How about
it's
a T bar that kind of starts in the center? She just gets going quickly.
Oh, yeah.
oh,
Oh,
starts
look.
at the center. Yeah.
It starts at the stem and goes forward,
Yeah, well, what did we learn about T-bars? If they, uh, Now, would that be procrastination? What is procrastination? Is that,
Procrastination would be left of the stem.
yes, left of the stem,
Left
but
of the stem.
not touching the stem, right? Left but not
Right of
touching.
the stem. Yeah, right of the stem would be, getting in a hurry to get something
Yes,
Well, I think
somewhere.
if they totally ignore the left of the stem, then they're just moving forward without considering the past.
yes, could be.
Uh-huh.
I mean, what I have seen a lot, and especially with some younger people, my daughter is, she'll be 32 in November. And I have seen my daughter, who's a teacher, who's a mother, who's very responsible, but she has pretty narrow margins. And I don't know if it's because I don't know if it's because she's used to running a classroom and she wants to take up all the space and let you know who's in charge. But a number of her friends do too. And of course, they're mostly printers or print scripters. They're in that generation, didn't really master cursive. Some did, but not as much. So
Yeah, I think it's a compliment to you, Barbara. I think that she likes home.
thank you. Oh, thank you for saying that. Yeah, she has one daughter who's 18 months and she's pregnant again. So I spend
Oh,
yeah, I know. I only have Amy's my
it's
only
beautiful.
child.
It'll be fun for those children, though, to be
It is.
close.
It is. Yes, it will be fun for them. I do watch my granddaughter, Kelly, now 3 days a week. So that's, I mean, I feel like by the time I come home on the third night, I feel like I'm drunk. I feel like
Uh-huh.
because you need a lot of energy with an 18-month-old. So with
Yeah.
two kids, we'll see. Yeah.
I don't think at that age group, I don't think you can evaluate it the same because they didn't have the same strict practicing that we were given in school, where this
That's
is where
true.
your margin is and you practiced it. They never had that strict practice and told to start here.
Right.
So I think when they look, they emulate like book margins that
Yeah.
book, where they've read. And a
Mhm.
lot of the books don't have a lot of margin in them. They used to, but a
Mm.
lot of new books have narrower margins in them.
So maybe that's a cost thing, less narrow margin, less paper needed to print the books. Wow.
So
But
there's no studies on this that I know of, but I think we have to be careful with those
I do
rules
too.
with
Right.
kids who did not have strict practice and this is how you do it. They had to figure it out on their own.
Right, right.
Yeah.
And so that's why we have to really become proficient at analyzing print. We no longer have the luxury of seeing a lot of connections and, you know, yeah, because most of Amy is she's largely a printer, but a little print script. And many of her friends are just straight printers. And of course now, thanks to our wonderful campaign for cursive contest, more and more states are bringing cursive back, but you wonder how many young teachers never learned it. So what's going to happen?
Yeah, the
I know.
teachers really don't know it.
Right,
Not, and the parents.
right,
One of
right.
the AHA conferences I attended, the two men that were at the when we went into the hotel that were checking us in were both teachers, but in the summertime they took this job on with the hotel, and so they asked what we were doing, and they said, "Well, can we write for you?" And so both of them printed out this the message. And I said, well, and what do you do other than this? And we're school teachers. Oh, I said, do you allow your students to print? I mean, I was not being very serious, but they said, oh, we demand it because we can't read cursive writing.
Yeah.
That's the teacher.
Yeah,
Mhm. It's true if you haven't learned the cursive, if you haven't learned to write in cursive, you're not able to read it. And
right.
and even the just different style changes. Wasn't there something about um the National Archives looking for people that could read
Yes.
some of the
Mhm.
old handwriting
Mhm.
styles? because we
Right.
don't learn those styles. Even those that learn cursive, we don't practice that.
That's
Yeah.
true.
And so we can't read it. Yeah.
Hello,
You-
can I add?
Yes.
Yes.
Sure.
Hi, my name is Carol, as you can see that it's showing up. And
Okay.
I'm a school teacher, so this is fascinating for me. And I've been listening. This is amazing. Um, I'm a new membership, so I'm getting all this good stuff. I'm listening. And I have to add that I learned cursive when I was in first grade. I've been teaching over 25 years, so I guess you can try to figure out how old I am. Okay. So one of my students, I've been doing the Cursive is Cool contest for many years. And some of my students have won, thank God. That's beautiful. And this year, one of my students won third place. And it's very interesting to see how cursive is evolving again. And many of my parents do not know how to read what their students have learned. So I've been enforcing that a lot, and it's just interesting to hear all of you speak and who doesn't know. And way back when, when I was growing up, that was a demand that was important, and now it's non-existent. So it's
Right.
really good to hear this.
It is. Well,
I
I
thank you,
know
Carol.
my granddaughter, she's now 19, but my granddaughter she taught herself cursive when she was 5, but she wasn't allowed to use it in school because they were teaching print.
Mhm.
And they never ever taught cursive. And the teachers did not want handwritten work and even print handed in. They wanted typing because it was too much trouble for them.
You're
So they
right.
never spent time on handwriting. It just never happened.
Wow.
Well, it kind of fell by the wayside when the Common Core was instituted. And there was
Right.
more of a focus on STEM classes, science, technology, math, and engineering, than on the classics.
Mhm.
And I think now, I think what happened, at least I'm in Massachusetts, some of the schools teach cursive. I think it's in like third grade or fourth grade. I mean, it's later than you would expect. And it's just to sign your name, and it's almost relegated to like
Yeah.
an art class, you know? It's very sad. I think.
Yeah. Yes, it is. Yes, it is.
So,
Carol,
so
what grade do you teach?
I teach second grade and I take it upon myself to teach it. This is not something that we are doing school wide. I'm doing it because I really, really believe in children learning that. I mean, one day those second graders are going to want to buy a house, going to want to buy a car, and learning how to write in cursive and being able to sign your name is such an important factor in our lives. And
Yes,
it's not being taken into consideration that this is what's going to happen. Writing our name in prints, it's not going to be accepted.
right.
you know Even teaching print, that's important because some of the children really don't have a legible
Mhm.
handwriting. So all those things are important to me, and I've taken upon myself.
Yeah.
So this is not
That's
a
great, Carol.
totally school-wide event that's
Yeah.
happening. Yes, because it's not acceptable.
Very good, Carol.
It's not part of the curriculum in I'm in New York City. In New York City, it's just not.
Wow. What
Can
does your
I
principal
say
say?
something about this printing?
Yes, Ruth.
15,000 ballots were not counted in Michigan because they went to the campus. They were 18 years old. They could vote, and they went like this, and then they had to vote, and they didn't match the this with the this, and they were not counted.
That happened in Nevada too. 9,000 ballots were
Yeah.
discounted because of that.
Yeah,
It
terrible.
happens all over the country.
It's
Now,
serious.
I don't understand what they were doing, Ruth.
They
They were-
didn't have
they were
matching
registering to vote.
signatures to what was on file, so their votes didn't count.
Mhm.
Wow.
They couldn't
How
sign a
sad.
signature.
That's
It's
awful.
just-
Wow.
Yeah.
So, you
I'm
know,
not surprised.
so in Canada, because I also attend court cases because I translate as well. So the police officers always bring their notes, and the notes always for many years, you know, I've been there for like over 20 years. They bring their handwritten notes. So the defendant would say, okay, and the defendant is supposed to get the what's called disclosure, the police notes. So they would get the notes, come back to the court and say, oh, but we can't read the handwriting. And so the officers were supposed to provide them with print written notes. And ever since, people started to complain because they couldn't read the police notes, you know, because it's a privilege, it's a right to know, to have the disclosure, what's called police notes. So right now, nobody is handwriting the notes. It's always typewritten notes. And then because, you know, it happens on the Zoom, all these cases, a lot of cases go on Zoom. Whenever I'm translating, I read, I don't read the handwritten notes. I read what the officer is saying.
Oh, yeah.
And
You
you know,
know,
I would think, Rachel, if there's a police officer involved in a case and he or she is standing up and taking notes, the writing might not be 100% reflection of what if he was sitting down and writing a letter or a card, but you'd still see, and Ruth, tell me if I'm wrong about this, you'd still see certain common characteristics, I would think. But I know when I'm writing a note standing up or something, it doesn't look, it's not that legible, is when I'm sitting down, no?
Well, I think you're true if you're dashing a note or something
Yeah.
like that, but that's a huge demand on the court to have to type up the notes of a policeman. That's terrible.
That's true.
yeah, they have to go back to their office, type everything out, provide the disclosure. And that goes for all the civil, the traffic cases, all the
Wow.
cases.
Oh,
Yes, so the courts are burdened regardless of how many people
You
come.
would think our whole society could decide right now. All of us have relatives or grandchildren or family members that really are embarrassed about their handwriting because they can't write.
right.
Yeah,
And yeah, my grandson came over and we had a little party for him and his friends, and they were going to write me a thank you note. And I'm telling you, they all apologized when they gave it to me. I don't really write much. And isn't that too bad? I mean, we have let our children down when we don't teach them how to write.
I agree.
Mhm.
Reading, writing, and arithmetic, those grade schools should have that.
Fundamentals.
But
Well,
I think there's enough people now. AHAF is doing a good job, and I know a lot of AHA members are too, of trying to promote getting cursive writing back in, or at least a decent handwriting.
mhm.
But
I,
they all type things.
They do. They all type things. And you know, I wrote a letter to the editor of my local small town newspaper many years ago about National Handwriting Day. And I said, and this was probably about 15 years ago, and I said, you know, if we keep going the way we're going, we're going to have a society, you know, from an evolutionary perspective, we're going to have longer thumbs, we're going to have hunchback, we're going to have beady eyes, and it's all from leaning over a cell phone to text things. And we sure don't want that, you know.
No.
So what
Welcome,
can we
Kevin.
do to better promote this? Like what
Well,
do
I
we
think,
do?
Carol, I
Because
think that there are, is it 26 states now that are demanding to get cursive back into the school?
Yes,
Or was it that many? It seemed to me
Yes.
I read
It
that.
is,
Yeah.
but the degree that they're bringing it back is all different. Like sometimes it's just they have to be able to write a signature by the time they're in 5th grade. I mean, it's you know, it's not as comprehensive as it used to be. But there are a lot of like public libraries and different community centers that are sponsoring, you know, learning cursive. And it's not like an everyday practice, but like on the weekends or once a week. And some kids are going to those kind of programs, but it's not the majority.
No, and I wonder too, you're all familiar with the SATs, right? The standardized test that students would take in
Yes.
high school to get into college. For many years, students had to write an essay. And I don't know now what the rules are. I mean, some colleges don't even require SATs anymore, but we know higher ed is, they're going through a lot of changes themselves now with more and more parents and students looking at the tuition costs and saying, I'd be better off going into the trades or something else. So I wonder if the way to answer Carol's question, if the way to really encourage not only schools and districts to introduce cursive, but to make people aware of the fact that it counts for something. It's more than just learning how to do a skill. It actually enhances your brain development. It helps you learn faster, quicker. That's the type of stuff that,
Memory and all the rest.
Yeah.
yeah.
Thinking.
The research has to get out into the public for them
Yes.
to realize how important it is.
Yes.
Yeah,
Yeah.
even the self-esteem. I mean, it makes a difference with the students. They feel so good. They
They-
get motivated. They even the ones that don't print really well, it has made a difference, and they're printing even better.
Oh,
Even with the cursive. So it's just it
Mhm.
just makes them a better person. I've seen
yes.
that.
Yeah.
Well,
Cursive,
that's
according
you're
to,
teaching it.
to research, cursive is easier to learn than printing.
Mhm.
And it has all these added benefits for brain development over printing. And you remember things more because things are more connected. So when you're writing in cursive, you're connecting things more in terms of ideas as well.
Right, right.
So,
So it would be interesting for the states that were early adopters or readopters who bring cursive back into their curriculum, maybe give them 4 or 5 years and see how did their students fare? Were their graduation rates higher? Were there after graduation more success stories? I mean, that would be kind of an interesting thing to track, because then we'd have some proving points,
right.
Right.
Yeah. Huh. And then compare them to states that didn't, you'd have a control group and that would be kind of interesting. It's only time, right?
Right.
Yeah.
Carol, do you ever talk to other teachers in your school, or do
I
they
do.
ask
I
about
do.
teaching cursive?
They are they watch me. The ones that do want to participate, may participate, but it's not on across the spectrum. I think some may feel, oh, it's a waste of time because it's not a system out there where every district is doing it, or that it is something that is needed. So it's a small core of teachers who are interested, right? So I think a lot of people think that it might be just a waste of time because society says it's not important.
Right. Right. And that's so sad. And that's what I mean. If we can prove to society that it's important because boom, boom, and these are the results. But maybe we don't have enough data yet to do that.
So the data could come from psychologists who are focusing on the brain development and how it actually has an impact on the mobility skill. So that's, we can only read sort of, unless we have the background of a psychologist. But if
Right.
we gather reports from several psychologists, it's not like, oh, it's only one bias.
Mhm.
Several independent psychologists who will stipulate and prove their research based on facts, why it's important. Because it looks like there was some kind of, I'm very reticent to use the word, some kind of idea, let's put it this
Yeah.
way, to remove the cursive. And the idea was so and so, but we're getting into kind of a different discussion why it was removed. But getting back to the psychologists, independent psychologists, if we can find their reports about the importance of cursive writing, why it is important. It's not, we're not saying here, or we're not implementing, oh, it has to replace. No, the digital will remain, but the importance is to have the handwriting at the same time and to have individuals learn the cursive.
Yeah.
But the fact that 26 states are now demanding cursive is actually a good sign. It means we're making progress.
Right.
But one of the main reasons is it's a literacy issue.
I want
That
to point,
because they cannot write it, they cannot read it. Victor,
now,
you need
a
to
good
say.
place to start for that research, Rachel, is actually in The Power of the Pen, where Jane Yank, Dr. Jane Yank, wrote the uses or the handwriting essential for learning, memory, and self-esteem. And she summarizes the research that you're talking about and periodically kind of updates what's going on. So there's a lot of research about how it supports
There's a
literacy.
lot of research around the world. It's
Yeah.
coming from every country, and that's why it's coming back in the schools, even as it trickles in. But that's
Yeah.
why it's coming back, because there has been a lot of research.
Yeah. So we're at the top of the hour, and I wanted to by the way, Kevin, you joined us. Can you hear me, Kevin? We joined a little bit late. Anyone, I wanted to just mention about next month's meeting is with Jane O'Brien's essay.
Hey.
You ready, Jane?
Thank you. Yes.
And
Wonderful.
Yes.
just when she and I were talking, I was like, the thing that's impressive to me, and I see it, you know, like what we were talking about at the beginning, how handwriting analysis, I'll use the word, handwriting analysis changes people's life. You know? And it doesn't matter.
Yep.
It doesn't matter. Like I was in junior high, I guess, when I first started studying. But it's like you can discover it when you're retired, and then you're right in there because it's so what you were talking about. It makes sense. I say it's
It makes
intuitively
sense.
obvious, you know, but so it's not like brain science or something like that. It really is about communication. But what I wanted to point out, I love Jane's essay about it. It shows, especially for people that are not, maybe are new to handwriting analysis, to how kind of like a story about how you came to, how this kind of came into your life.
I think it
Yes.
is kind of interesting to hear each of when you talk to anyone that's in this field. How did
Yeah.
you get interested in it? Because you can hardly find a course on it.
Right.
Yes.
But if you're really, if it just catches you like it did you, Barbara, and I felt the same way. It is so such a wonderful discipline.
It is. It is. I mean, I feel like we're all so privileged to know this and to have studied this and to know each other. So it's a real joy. Yeah.
It is.
It is so true.
Thank you
Thank
very
you
much,
so
Barbara.
much.
Oh, you're welcome.
Yes.
Thank you.
Yes.
Thank
It
you
was
all.
very,
Can I
very
throw
good.
in something from Massachusetts?
Yes.
Yes.
Is appropriate. I grew up in Concord, where the shot heard around the world,
Right.
and there was a famous author by the name of Henry David Thoreau.
Oh, Oh,
And
yeah.
somebody came from the other side of the world with a battered copy of Thoreau's Walden Pond. There's a pond there.
Mhm.
And
Oh,
he came, my father was part of Rotary, and he was staying there. And he said, I just want to sit in front of the cabin of Henry David Thoreau and read the book. Okay, we knew where the pond was, but we did not know where his cabin was. And this man said to us, it is darkest beneath the flame. It is darkest under the candle. We lived in the town.
Yeah.
We didn't know where the cabin was, and he shook his head. But I think that is what we do as handwriting people. It is darkest beneath the flame. People are out there doing their thing, but we as handwriting analysts show what's beneath the candle.
Yeah.
Put that out there.
Beautiful.
that's great.
It's
Very
darkest
good, Ruth.
beneath
Thank you.
the candle.
I like that. I'm gonna write that down.
Very
Thank
good.
So the
Mhm.
next reading, it's called Passion for a Lifetime. I love your title, Jane.
Oh, thank you. I
Very
really
good.
did. I felt like Barbara. I didn't feel like I had that much to contribute, but all of us do
Yeah.
have something to contribute, how it affects us.
Thank you.
Exactly. And Kevin, can you hear me? These are recorded. I don't know if I have your email. If you want to put your email in the chat, I'll see that you get a link to the recording when we get it put up. Because since you came in late, it looked like. if you
Victor,
would like. Yes.
this is Cindy
Yeah.
from AHA. And I sent, Judy had sent the link to your YouTube channel. So when I send the email to AHA members, they get that link.
Okay,
So
that's good.
They all,
That's good.
Yep, they all have it. Yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you for that.
Oh, okay. Good. Good.
It's great.
Take
Well,
care.
thanks, everybody. Thanks so
Thank
much.
you.
Thank
Yeah.
you, Barbara.
I
Yeah,
just
So
want to
good hear
mention
you.
one other thing.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, I looked it up online. There are 16 languages that go from right to left.
Wow.
Oh,
And
16.
probably the best known ones are Hebrew, Arabic, Urdu, and Farsi, which is what they speak in Iran. The other thing about Hebrew that's unusual, traditionally it's been block printing and mostly middle zone, some upper zone, almost nothing in the lower zone. So, but they do have script now, and but the only thing traditionally in the lower zone in Hebrew were little dots and dashes that signify vowels, but they're not letters, they're just sounds.
Okay. Well,
Interesting.
Thank you. That is
Hmm.
interesting.
Thank you.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
16.
All right, everybody.
I didn't know that.
No, I didn't
Yeah,
either.
and that, I don't know if they're including Chinese in that, but that, which is written from top to bottom, I think. I'm not sure because I don't really know much about Chinese. But anyway,
Now we know.
Thank you,
Thank you
Debbie.
very
Thank
much.
you.
All right. All right, everybody. Well, enjoy your day. Stay cool. I hope you have AC wherever you are.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Take
we're
care.
not going to be very hot. We're going to be just right.
Okay.
About 75.
It's not too bad here. It's starting to cool down in the evening over here.
Where are
so-
you,
Um,
Victor?
In England right now.
Oh, you're in
cool.
England
Yeah.
and it's
Yeah,
hot.
it's just surprisingly hot.
Yeah, it's
Wow.